Hi, this is Mrs. Solomon, and we are continuing in our study of the Gospel of Mark. This time we are going to chapter 3, verse 7 through chapter 6, verse 6, the first part of chapter 6. So we are examining Jesus' continued ministry in Galilee. Remember what Jesus has come to do? He's come to bring the kingdom of God to the people. And so we saw how he did that in the last screencast, how he healed, how he exorcised. He healed on the Sabbath to bring life. He showed how his ministry and the new way of looking at traditional symbols of Judaism, such as the Sabbath, such as fasting, how they don't fit with the old way of doing things in Judaism. So that's what it means to bring forth the kingdom. So let's look a little bit more at some of his ministry. Here in this passage, once again, Jesus heals many people. It says that they come to him in great numbers from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, beyond the Jordan, and the region around Tyre and Sidon. So they're coming from areas outside of Galilee, even though Galilee is where he is doing his ministry right now. And notice that it says that he cured many, so that all who had diseases pressed upon him to touch him. Whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and shouted, "You are the Son of God." So the unclean spirits know who Jesus is. And they're the only ones within within Mark's narrative who know who Jesus is. But notice that Jesus doesn't want to be made known. And so the question would be why? Well, I'm not going to answer the question yet. We'll get to it fairly soon. So moving along in the narrative, here he calls the 12 disciples, and this list varies depending on the gospel that you are reading. Notice that these disciples, it says in verse 16, so he appointed the 12. These 12, as it says in verse 14, are referred to as apostles, who are to be sent out to proclaim the message and to have authority to cast out demons. The definition for apostle is one who is sent out as a messenger on behalf of somebody else. And so these apostles sent out on behalf of Jesus get to do the same things that Jesus does. Not only preach the message, but they also have authority to cast out demons as well. Okay, so the next passage is Mark chapter 3, verse 19b through 35. As you can see here, this passage represents a sandwich. And so what I would like for you to do is sort of struggle with this yourself. See if you can't discern what it is that's going on in the passage. Remember that a sandwich, the technical term is intercalation. You've got a story embedded within a story. So here you've got chapter 3 verses 22 through 30 embedded in chapter 3 verses 19b to 21 and 3 verse 31 through 35. So pause the screencast and see if you can't struggle with that and work that through. What we will do is work on that in class on tomorrow. But remember that the sandwich, even though you have one story embedded in another, remember that Mark is focusing on a single theme. So see if you can't identify what that is. Okay. In the meantime, we're going to move on. And so in Mark chapter 4, Jesus teaches in parables. And the key to the parables, and we're going to work on this in class as well, the key to the theme of the parables is chapter 4, verse 11, 26, and 30. So if you read through this whole section and then read chapter 4, verses 11, 26, and 30, you should get an idea of what the parables are about. And so we will talk more about that tomorrow as well. Just real quickly before I leave this chapter in your hands, just want to give you a brief definition of parable, and I'm sorry I didn't put it on the screen, but if you'll just pause it as I'm going through. A parable, according to one scholar, is a short fictional narrative that compares something familiar to an unexpected spiritual value. Okay. Once again, it's a short fictional narrative that compares something familiar to an unexpected spiritual value, and that something familiar is something familiar in their times. So keep that in mind as you're looking at these parables and attempting to discern them. Once again, we'll go over that in class as well. So the next passage here is chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. And here, Jesus is going to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. The other side of the Sea of Galilee on the east side is Gentile territory. And when he gets there, he meets a man with an unclean spirit. This man, when Jesus sees him, he comes to Jesus, and the unclean spirit says, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." Once again, the demons know who Jesus is as the Son of God. He identifies himself out as Jesus dialogues with him. He identifies himself as Legion, for we are many. Legion is a word that comes from the Latin, which means a large group of soldiers. It means thousands. So you have this implication of this battle that's going on in this man. And so the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine. Let us enter them." And he gave them permission. And so they entered the swine. There were about 2,000 of them, and they rushed down and they drowned in the sea. This is representative of the unclean spirits being destructive, as evidenced by what they do with the swine. So if they're destructive to the swine, they've been destructive to this man who they've possessed all of this time. So what Jesus has done is he has delivered the man from these destructive forces. And once again, you see the kingdom of God coming to pass in Jesus' ministry for this man. So as the passage continues, the people came, they saw the man, they referred to him as a demoniac sitting there. He's in his right mind. But they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. Why? Because they've just destroyed 2,000 pigs. Necessarily, that's probably a source of income for them. But it says that Jesus told the man, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." This is one of the only instances in which Jesus says, "Go tell what the Lord has done for you." It could be that he is in Gentile territory, and the implications and the significance of what he has done and what the man recognizes Jesus as having done for him is going to be different than on the other side of the Sea of Galilee or on the Jewish side. So once again, it's a secret. That's one of the themes of the Gospel of Mark. It'll become clear as we get to the mid portion of the Gospel of Mark. Okay, guess what we have next? Another sandwich. So this is contained in Mark chapter 5, verse 21 through 43. And I'd like for you to struggle with this one as well. I'm going to be calling on y'all tomorrow to work with these passages and tell us what you've come up with. Struggle with it. Stop the tape. Struggle with it now. All right. Lastly, here what we're going to discuss is after he left that place, he went to his hometown. He went to Nazareth. And on the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue. But notice the reaction. They say, "Where did this man get all this? Where did he come from? Where did he get all this wisdom? Wait, he's doing all this stuff. This is the carpenter. We know who he is." And they took offense at him. Here is presented an insider-outsider theme, and it is also present from chapter 3, verse 7 through now, that those in Jesus' hometown should know who he is, but they reject him. He even says in verse 4 of chapter 6, "Prophets are not without honor, except in their hometown and among their own kin and in their own house," meaning that people that where the prophet is from, they will not respect him. And so he couldn't do any deed of power there because they did not believe. They had no faith. And so there is a relationship here between faith and healing. So this ends this first part of Jesus' ministry, his early ministry in Galilee. I know I went over this kind of fast, but that's because I want you to struggle with 3 passages here. So work on that, but this is what I want you guys to be able to answer. In total, how is Jesus portrayed in Mark chapter 1, verse 16 through 6a? We just got through with that. And how is Mark's portrayal of Jesus, and notice that does not look right, how is Mark's portrayal of Jesus related to Jesus' purpose in this section? Okay, you got a little bit of work to do, but I'm excited to see what you're going to come up with. So get to work, and I will see you during next class period.